They say you can smell a gas leak before it kills you. I didn't. What I remember most about that night wasn't the smell, it was the silence right before the world exploded. It was 2:43 a.m. My wife was asleep beside me, our daughter in the next room, and the only sound in the house was the hum of the furnace. Then, without warning, a sound like thunder ripped through the walls, followed by heat, blinding and violent. My name is Daniel Harper, and this is the story of how I lost everything, my home, my savings, and my trust in the system that's supposed to protect people like us. Before I take you through it, let me ask something. If your home burned down tonight, do you really believe your insurance company would help you? Comment below, I want to hear your thoughts. And please subscribe, because what happened to me could happen to anyone, and I don't want anyone walking into this blind. When I opened my eyes, the ceiling was glowing orange. Smoke poured in from the hallway. My chest tightened, that kind of burning that makes you cough before you can even speak. I grabbed my wife, Sarah. "Get up, fire!" She sat up, gasping, eyes wide. Then I heard the alarm start shrill, almost too late. I ran into the hall barefoot, choking. The air was thick and bitter. My daughter, Lily, was at the top of the stairs, crying, clutching her stuffed bunny. I didn't think, I just ran. I scooped her up and turned toward the front door. The handle was glowing. I could feel the heat through the metal. I yelled, "Sarah, window, go through the window!" She was coughing so hard she couldn't speak. I wrapped a blanket around Lily, kicked the door open with everything I had, and we stumbled into the freezing night air. Behind us, our house roared like it was alive. The windows shattered, fire swallowing the walls, the roof beginning to cave. I remember looking back, my arms still around my family, thinking, it's gone. Everything's gone. The firefighters came fast, but by then there wasn't much left to save. We stood there in silence, no shoes, no coats, nothing but shock. When the fire captain finally came over, his voice was calm but heavy. "Looks like a gas leak started in the basement," he said. "You're lucky you woke up when you did." A gas leak? That didn't make sense. I'd checked the heater just last week. Everything was fine. How could gas leak in a house that passed inspection only a year ago? I wanted to ask questions, but my throat was raw. The smell of burnt wood and melted plastic hung in the air like poison. By morning, our home was just black skeleton beams and smoke. The Red Cross gave us blankets and placed us in a small roadside motel. Sarah sat on the bed staring at her wedding ring. It was smeared with ash. Lily kept asking when we were going home. I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth. Instead, I said, "Soon, sweetheart. Daddy's going to fix it." I didn't know then how wrong I was. That afternoon, I called the insurance company, the one I'd been paying faithfully for almost a decade. The woman on the phone sounded cheerful. "Oh, Mr. Harper, I'm so sorry to hear that. Don't worry, you're covered for total fire loss. We'll have an adjuster out there within 48 hours. For the first time since the fire, I felt a small bit of relief. I turned to Sarah. "They said we're covered. We'll rebuild." She smiled faintly. "Thank God." I believed her. I believed them. I thought that after paying every premium, following every rule, the least they'd do was help us get back on our feet. I couldn't have been more wrong. 2 days later, a white SUV pulled up to what used to be our house. A man stepped out, polished shoes crunching on ash. He introduced himself, Tom Donnelly, field adjuster for Nationwide Assurance. He shook my hand, his grip dry, professional. Then he started walking around with a tablet, snapping photos, asking questions in that careful tone people use when they're pretending to care. "How old was your furnace? When was the last maintenance check? Any history of leaks before?" I answered everything honestly, but every question felt like a trap. I caught him staring at the gas line for a long time, frowning slightly. Finally, he closed his tablet and said, "We'll need to conduct a full investigation, Mr. Harper." "Just standard procedure." He smiled, but his eyes told me something different, like he already knew how this story was going to end. That night back in the motel, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing flashes of orange behind my eyelids, hearing that sound, the muffled boom that woke me up. I opened my phone, scrolling through old photos. I found one I'd taken 2 days before the fire, the living room decorated for Lily's birthday. Everyone was smiling. The house looked warm, safe, alive. Then I noticed something strange. In the background, near the corner of the frame, just beside the basement door, there was a small, dark spot on the wall. I zoomed in. It looked like burn marks, faint but real. Had it been there before, my stomach twisted. I couldn't remember. I thought about what the firefighter said. Gas leak in the basement. And suddenly, every memory of the last week replayed in my mind. The flickering light near the furnace, the faint smell I brushed off as paint thinner, the clicking noise that stopped whenever I went to check. I should have known. But before guilt could swallow me, something else did, doubt. Because what if that dark spot wasn't from us? What if something deeper was wrong, something the insurance company didn't want to admit? At 3 a.m., I looked out the motel window toward the direction of our street. All I could see was smoke still rising faintly against the night sky. I whispered to myself, "It's over." But I was wrong. The fire was just the beginning. The real nightmare started when the insurance company decided to blame me for it. If you were in my place, what would you do? Would you trust the insurance company to do what's right or start looking for answers yourself? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. And don't forget to subscribe, because what happened next will make you question everything about coverage. You don't realize how much your life depends on four walls until you lose them. When our house burned, it wasn't just the structure, it was the memories that burned with it. Every room, every photo, every toy that belonged to my little girl gone in one night. The next morning, I sat in the motel room surrounded by donation bags. Red Cross volunteers had been kind. They brought us clothes, toothpaste, food vouchers. But it all felt temporary. I didn't want handouts. I wanted my life back. That's when I told myself, it's okay, we have insurance, they'll fix this. Before I go deeper, let me ask you something. Do you trust your insurance company to be there for you when it matters most? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read them all. And make sure to subscribe, because the deeper I went into this process, the more I realized how wrong I was to trust them. 2 days after the fire, the adjuster, Tom Donnelly, called me back. "Mr. Harper," he said, his voice smooth and distant. "We've started the claim review. I'll need a few more documents from you, receipts for major appliances, proof of home maintenance, and your policy declaration page." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. "Whatever you need, I'll get it." "Good. The faster we have everything, the faster we can process your claim." He made it sound so easy. So I spent the next 48 hours digging through everything we had left, calling the gas company, requesting inspection reports, bank statements, invoices from the contractor who last checked the furnace. I barely slept. I wanted to be ready to cooperate to prove that I wasn't at fault. When I emailed everything over, he replied almost instantly, "Thank you, Mr. Harper. I'll be in touch soon." For the first time in a week, I actually felt a flicker of hope. We moved into a temporary rental arranged through the insurance company. It was small, 2 bedrooms, old carpet, a faint smell of mildew, but it was a roof. Sarah unpacked what little we had left while Lily tried to draw our old house from memory. She drew it perfectly, the white siding, the blue door, even the swing in the yard. She handed me the picture and said, "Can we go back home now, Daddy?" I swallowed hard and smiled. "Soon, baby, real soon." I wanted to believe that. A week later, I got an email from Donnelly. He said he needed to meet again, this time to go over specific details about the fire. When he showed up, his expression was calm, too calm. He sat across from me at the small kitchen table, tablet open, tapping away. "I reviewed your maintenance records," he said. "Everything seems in order, but there's one thing that concerns me." I frowned. "What's that?" He turned the tablet toward me. On the screen was a zoomed-in photo of the gas line in the basement, or what was left of it. "See this joint here?" he said, pointing. "According to the fire marshal, this might have been leaking for days before the explosion. Did you ever notice a smell of gas?" "No," I said firmly. "Never, not once." He nodded slowly, like he didn't quite believe me. "Sometimes small leaks can go unnoticed." Sarah, who'd been listening nearby, stepped in. "We checked everything before bed every night. Daniel is meticulous about that." He smiled politely. "Of course, I'm just gathering information." He closed the tablet, stood up, and said, "We'll have a preliminary report ready soon." Then he handed me a business card. "Feel free to reach out if you have questions, but remember, this process can take time." When he left, the room felt colder. That night, I couldn't shake a strange feeling. His questions weren't about helping us, they were about blaming us. I reread the email he'd sent earlier and noticed a line I hadn't paid attention to before. "Please refrain from making any repairs or alterations to the property site until our investigation is complete." That meant I couldn't touch anything, couldn't clean up, couldn't collect personal items still buried in the ashes. Our home was a scene. But a scene of what? An accident, or something they already suspected was my fault. 3 days later, I received a voicemail from the insurance company's home office. A different voice this time, a woman who said she was from the Claims Integrity Department. She said, "Mr. Harper, we just need to confirm a few details about your homeowner's history, and we'd like to review your payment records for the past 2 years. Payment records. I'd never missed a single payment. Why were they asking that? I called her back immediately, but she was unavailable. Something inside me started to twist. It felt like the moment right before a storm when you know the sky is about to break open. That evening, Sarah and I sat together in silence. The TV was on, but neither of us was watching. Finally, she whispered, "Do you think they're trying to find a reason not to pay?" I didn't want to admit it, but I'd been thinking the same thing. "I don't know," I said quietly, "but it's starting to feel that way." She nodded, eyes glassy. "Then we need to be ready." I took her hand and promised, "I'll fight for us no matter what." But even as I said it, I knew this wasn't going to be easy. A week passed, no updates. Then an email arrived. Subject line, "Fire claim, additional review required." The message was short. "Mr. Harper, we are conducting further review on your claim due to inconsistencies in the preliminary report. Please be patient as we finalize our findings. Inconsistencies, that word made my stomach drop. What inconsistencies? I had given them everything. I stared at the screen for a long time trying to understand. Then I realized something chilling. They weren't finalizing help. They were building a case. That night after Sarah and Lily went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen. The fridge hummed quietly, the only sound in the house. I opened my laptop and began researching. Insurance claim denied gas leak. Hundreds of stories came up, people just like me. Fires, floods, destroyed homes, all told their insurance would handle it. Until suddenly they didn't. Every story started the same way. Everyone ended in denial. I felt sick. And that's when I realized the moment the fire stopped, the real fight had begun. Not against the flames, but against something colder, quieter, and far more ruthless. If your insurance company started asking questions like that, would you still trust them, or would you start preparing for a battle? Tell me what you think in the comments. And make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next will show just how far they'll go to protect themselves, not you. I stood outside what used to be my house, now just a blackened skeleton, as the insurance inspector arrived. He stepped out of a white truck with Reliant Home Insurance written across the side. His name tag said G. Miller, Senior Adjuster. He walked like he already knew everything. Clipboard in hand, safety vest on, hard hat slightly tilted, like he'd seen 1,000 disasters and didn't feel a single one of them. "Morning, Mr. Collins," he said flatly. "Sorry for your loss." But his tone said otherwise. There was no sympathy, just procedure. I forced a small nod. "Thank you, I just want to know how soon I can start rebuilding." He didn't answer. Instead, he started taking photos of the foundation, the gas line, even my melted mailbox. Then out of nowhere, he asked, "Did you ever notice a gas smell before the incident?" I frowned. "No, not once. If I had, I would have called the gas company immediately." He scribbled something, didn't even look at me. Then he asked again, "Any recent renovations? Maybe DIY work on the furnace or kitchen?" I felt my chest tight. "No, everything was professionally installed. The system was inspected 6 months ago." He hummed under his breath, almost skeptical. That sound, that tiny, judgmental hum, stayed in my head all day. As he walked around, snapping pictures, I followed him. I was desperate to understand what was happening. At one point, I said, "I just want to make sure the insurance will cover this. I've been paying for years, full coverage, no claims." He stopped mid-step, turned slightly, and said, "We'll see once we review everything." Then he smiled, that polite, rehearsed smile you give before delivering bad news. Something felt wrong. Deeply wrong. That evening, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flames licking the walls, my wife screaming my name, my son crying as we ran barefoot into the cold night. But now there was another nightmare, one that wore a suit and carried a clipboard. The next morning, I got a call from a woman named Sandra from the insurance company. "Mr. Collins, we're just following up on the inspection. We might need to verify your maintenance records." "Maintenance records?" I repeated. "For what?" "For your gas appliances, furnace, and kitchen installation. Also, if you have any receipts for the work done, please email them." My gut dropped. "Wait, are you saying you think I caused the fire?" "Oh, no, no," she said quickly, too quickly. "It's just a standard procedure, nothing to worry about." But I was worried. You don't ask for proof of innocence unless you're planning to blame someone. Over the next few days, I gathered everything, the inspection certificates, the plumber's invoice, even the maintenance logs. I sent them all in, labeled, scanned, and neatly organized. I wanted them to see that I had nothing to hide. Still silence, no callback, no update, just an empty inbox and a growing sense of dread. Then, out of curiosity, or maybe desperation, I went back to the burned lot. That's when I saw it. A second vehicle, same logo, Reliant Home Insurance. But this time, 2 men in plain clothes. One of them was kneeling by the gas main, taking something, I think a sample. The other one was photographing the stove area, whispering something to his partner. When I approached, they looked startled. "Hey, can I help you?" one asked, defensive. "I'm the homeowner," I said. "What's going on?" "Oh, just part of the follow-up investigation, standard procedure." But again, that phrase, standard procedure, it suddenly felt like code for something else. I walked away, my heart pounding. Why were they acting like detectives? Why did I feel like the suspect in my own tragedy? That night I told my wife, "Something's not right. I think they're trying to find a reason to deny the claim." She looked up from her laptop, eyes red from exhaustion. "They can't do that, can they? It was a gas leak. You didn't cause it." "I know, but what if they say I did?" She shook her head, refusing to believe it. "They wouldn't. They have evidence, reports, witnesses." I cut her off. "They control the evidence. They control the reports. We just lost everything." For the first time since the fire, she broke down crying. "I just want our home back, Daniel. I just want to feel safe again." And that crushed me because I didn't have an answer. 3 days later, another email, short, cold, no greeting. "Mr. Collins, your claim is under detailed review. Preliminary findings suggest possible homeowner negligence in maintenance of gas lines. Further updates to follow." I read it twice, then 3 times, negligence. That word hit like a bullet. My heart sank. I wasn't just losing my home, I was being blamed for it. I know this sounds crazy, but that night I parked my car outside the burned lot and sat there in the dark watching the place that used to be my life. I kept replaying everything in my head. What did I miss? Did I leave the stove on? Did a pipe burst? Could I have prevented it? No, I knew the truth. I checked everything that night. The explosion came from below, not inside. But truth doesn't always matter when you're up against money and power. And deep down, I felt it, the nightmare wasn't over. It was just changing shape. If your insurance company started blaming you after a tragedy, what would you do? Would you fight back or walk away? Tell me in the comments below. And please subscribe, because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about justice. I'll never forget that morning. The air was cold, quiet, too quiet as I stepped outside to grab the mail. It had been almost 3 weeks since the fire. 3 weeks of waiting, hoping, convincing myself that the worst was behind me. But then I saw it. A white envelope with the Reliant Home Insurance logo in the corner. I froze. Something about the thickness of that envelope. The way my name was printed in bold letters made my stomach twist. I didn't open it right away. I just stood there on the porch of the temporary apartment we were renting, staring at it, like it was a bomb waiting to go off. Finally, I tore it open. Dear Mr. Collins, after careful investigation of your recent claim, we regret to inform you that your policy does not cover the incident in question. Our findings indicate that the fire originated from a neglected gas leak inside the property, caused by improper homeowner maintenance and failure to uphold safety protocols. Accordingly, your claim is denied under Section 4A, homeowner negligence. I dropped the paper. It fluttered to the floor, that one word echoing in my head like a death sentence: denied. For a long moment, I couldn't move. My ears rang, my hands went numb. I just stood there, staring at the page. I hadn't done anything wrong. I didn't even touch that gas line. When I finally picked up the letter again, the words blurred with my tears. I sat down, my heart pounding, and whispered to myself, no, this can't be real. When my wife Sarah came into the room, I didn't even know what to say. She saw my face, saw the letter in my hand, and went pale. What is it? She asked softly. I handed it to her. Her eyes darted across the page, then she gasped. Negligence, Daniel, that's insane. They can't just... I cut her off, my voice cracking. They did. She dropped the paper on the table and grabbed her phone. We're calling them right now. We got connected to the same adjuster, G. Miller. He answered with that same calm, robotic tone. Mr. Collins, I understand you're calling about your claim decision. Understand, I snapped. You're accusing me of causing a gas explosion that nearly killed my family. Sir, the investigation found evidence of corrosion and tampering in the gas line. That typically points to improper maintenance or unauthorized work. Tampering, I repeated, stunned. I didn't even touch those lines. He sighed like he'd heard it all before. Our report stands as is, Mr. Collins. You're free to appeal, but unless you can provide contrary evidence, the decision is final. Contrary evidence? I said, my voice rising. You mean evidence that I didn't destroy my own house? Silence. Then, that would help, yes. I almost threw the phone. That night, Sarah and I sat on the floor surrounded by folders, invoices, inspection reports, photos of the house before the fire. We tried to piece together proof that we weren't to blame for something we didn't do. But the more I looked, the more helpless I felt. Because no matter what papers we had, it didn't matter. They already made up their mind. Insurance companies don't care about emotion. They care about numbers, and paying us meant losing theirs. Sarah whispered, we can't just let this go. We have to fight them. I nodded. Yeah, but first we need to know what really happened. The next day, I called the local fire department and asked for the official investigation report. It took hours, but finally I got a copy emailed to me. And that's when I noticed something strange. Under the section labeled Origin of Fire, the report said, explosion caused by underground gas leak, likely due to compromised line leading to main valve. Underground, not inside the house. But the insurance letter claimed the leak started inside. That one word difference changed everything. Because if the leak started outside the property line, it wasn't my fault. It was the gas company's responsibility. My heart raced. Was this their mistake or something more deliberate? That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at both documents, the fire department report and the insurance denial. One said underground. The other said inside. Someone was lying, and suddenly I remembered the second inspection, those 2 men who came without warning. The ones who looked nervous when I asked what they were doing. What if they were sent to twist the report, to find any angle that could shift the blame onto me? I felt sick. They weren't investigating the fire, they were investigating me. I stayed up all night researching online, insurance denial due to gas leak, homeowner negligence claims, how to fight insurance denial. I found hundreds of stories just like mine, families who lost everything only to be blamed for it. People who paid for years and when tragedy struck got a cold letter instead of help. It made me realize this wasn't just about me. It was about how easily they can twist truth when you're desperate and broken. By sunrise, I had made up my mind. If they wanted to fight, I'd fight. If they wanted evidence, I'd find it, because I wasn't going to let them rewrite my story. If your insurance company denied your claim after losing everything, would you fight them or walk away? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. What's coming next might make you question who's really protecting us. When I called the fire investigator the next morning, I wasn't expecting him to pick up, but he did. Fire Investigation Unit, this is Officer Reynolds. I took a breath. Hi, officer, my name's Daniel Collins. You were the lead investigator on the house fire on Willow Creek Drive 3 weeks ago. There was a pause. Then, yeah, I remember that one. Gas explosion, right? Rough case. What can I do for you? I hesitated. I just received my insurance company's report. They're claiming the leak started inside the house, but your report says it started underground near the main valve. He exhaled slowly. That's correct. The origin was below ground, close to the curb, definitely not inside. My pulse quickened. So they're wrong. I can't speak for them, he said carefully. But if they're saying it started inside, that's not what we found. I clenched the phone tighter. Could someone have changed your report? Silence. Then softly, Mr. Collins, I've seen cases where reports were interpreted differently, but my findings are on file. They can't change the official document. Can I get a signed copy? I asked. He hesitated again. Sure, but just be careful who you share it with. That line stuck with me, be careful who you share it with. That evening, I printed the full report and spread it out on the table. There it was in black and white. Origin, underground gas main. Cause, pipe deterioration at external joint. Everything pointed to a faulty line, something outside my control. But the insurance company was calling it homeowner negligence. It didn't make sense unless they wanted it to. I started digging deeper. I looked up Reliant Home Insurance on consumer forums, Reddit threads, even news articles. What I found made my blood run cold. Dozens of complaints. Families who lost homes to fire, floods, or storms all told the same thing. Claim denied, negligence. Different disasters, same excuse. Some people even mentioned the same adjuster, G. Miller. That's when I realized this wasn't a mistake, it was a pattern. The next day, I called the insurance company again, this time asking to speak with a supervisor. Reliant Home Insurance, this is Sandra. My voice was steady. Sandra, this is Daniel Collins. I need to talk to someone above Mr. Miller regarding my claim denial. Can I ask the reason for escalation? She said. Yes, I said firmly, because I have the official fire department report that contradicts yours, and I'd like to know why your company falsified information. Silence, then a nervous laugh. Sir, I assure you nothing was falsified. Then explain this, I cut in, because your letter says the leak started inside. The fire marshal says underground. So which one of you is lying? She stammered. Mr. Collins, please hold. I waited 1 minute, then 3, then 5. Finally, the line went dead. They hung up. That's when I knew for sure they were covering something up. I went straight to a local attorney the next morning, Michael Grant, a sharp, fast-talking man who specialized in insurance disputes. His office was small but filled with framed newspaper clippings of past victories. He listened quietly as I told him everything, the fire, the denial, the mismatched reports. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, You're not the first. Reliant has a reputation. My chest tightened. So what can I do? He smiled faintly. We start by requesting their internal investigation files, adjuster notes, photos, emails. Once they know you have representation, they'll take you seriously. Will it be expensive? I asked. He shrugged. It could be. But if we win, they pay the costs, and from what you're saying, this is winnable. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. That night, Sarah hugged me. Are you sure about this, going up against an insurance company? I nodded. I'm done being quiet. They think people like us won't fight back. It's time they're wrong. She smiled through her tears. Then I'm with you. A few days later, we sent a formal letter to Reliant demanding full documentation of their investigation, all photos, reports, and communication related to my case. And suddenly, things started happening fast. 2 days later, I got a call from G. Miller himself. Mr. Collins, he said, his voice suddenly polite, I see you've engaged legal representation. I just want to clarify that our findings were based on evidence provided by third-party contractors. Third party. I repeated, You mean those guys who came to my property unannounced? He hesitated. They were certified specialists. Certified to lie? I snapped. He sighed. Look, Mr. Collins, these cases are complicated. Maybe there was confusion about the origin point. Let's not escalate things unnecessarily. I laughed bitterly. You destroyed my life, and now you're asking me to stay calm. Sir. No, I cut in. You denied me the one thing I'd been paying for all these years. You turned my tragedy into a technicality, so yes, I'll escalate it. And then I hung up. That night, Sarah and I sat together watching the flames of a candle dance on the table, the only kind of fire we could still bear to see. "I'm scared," she whispered. "What if they drag this out for years?" I looked at her. "Then we fight for years because this isn't just about the house anymore, it's about what's right." But deep down, I knew once you challenge a company with power and money, you become a problem they want to silence. A week later, my lawyer called. "Daniel," he said, "we got the files, but you're going to want to sit down before you see them." "What's in them?" I asked. He paused. "Let's just say there are photos in their report that don't match the fire marshal's findings, and a technician's signature that looks off." My pulse quickened. "You mean forged?" "I can't say yet. But if it is, this isn't just negligence, it's fraud. If your insurance company lied about your claim, what would you do? Would you take them to court or expose them publicly? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because what Daniel finds next will shock you." When my lawyer, Michael, told me to sit down before opening the file, I thought he was exaggerating. But the second I saw what was inside, my hands started shaking. The file was thick, filled with printed photos, documents, and inspection reports from Reliant Home Insurance's official investigation. Except one thing didn't make sense. The photos. The photos they used as evidence weren't even from my house. I stared at the first picture, a kitchen completely destroyed by flames, black soot crawling up the walls, but the stove was different. The layout was different. Even the tiles were the wrong color. "This isn't my house," I muttered. Michael nodded grimly. "Keep looking." Another photo, a basement with a cracked gas pipe marked with red tape. Except my home didn't even have a basement. I looked up at him. "What the hell is this?" He leaned back in his chair. "This isn't evidence, Daniel. This is manipulation. They use someone else's property photos to justify your denial." My mind went blank. "You mean they fabricated this?" He nodded slowly. "Looks that way." The timestamp metadata on these photos shows they were taken months before your fire, not even the same day. I couldn't breathe. After everything, the fire, the trauma, the loss, now this. "They lied," I whispered. "They actually lied." Michael flipped to another document. "See this technician's signature, T. Harris?" I nodded. "Well, I checked the contractor's license. There's no technician under that name registered in this province." "You mean he doesn't exist?" He smirked slightly. "Not officially." My stomach turned. "So they made up an inspector, a fake person." "Or used someone else's credentials," Michael said. "Either way, we've got grounds for fraud and evidence tampering." I leaned forward, gripping my hair. "This is insane. They could have just paid the claim. Instead, they built a lie." Michael's voice softened. "They bet on you giving up. That's how they win. Most people don't dig this far." "Well," I said through clenched teeth, "I'm not most people." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the balcony of our small rental apartment, staring at the dark sky, the faint smell of smoke still stuck in my memory. Sarah came outside, wrapped in a blanket. "Did you find something?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, they used fake photos, a fake inspector. The report, it's all fabricated." Her eyes widened. "Oh my God, Daniel," I looked at her. "They burned our life to the ground, then they buried the truth in paperwork." She sat beside me, silent. Then she said something that hit hard. "What if they've done this to other families too?" That question echoed in my mind long after she went inside. The next morning, I started digging deeper, not just into my case, but into Reliant Home Insurance itself. I looked up their corporate records, board members, and legal filings. Buried in the fine print of a public record, I found something strange, a small subcontractor listed as Forensic Fire Analysis Limited. It was the same company name written on the fake technician's report, so I called them. "Hello, this is Forensic Fire Analysis." "Yes, hi, this is Daniel Collins. I'm calling regarding a report filed under your name for a house fire on Willow Creek Drive." There was silence. Then the man on the phone said, "We've never investigated a property by that name." My heart stopped. "You're sure? Positive? We haven't worked with Reliant since last year." I felt my entire world tilt. They'd used a defunct company's name to make the report look legitimate. That was it, proof they'd forged everything. I called Michael immediately. "Get ready," he said. "We're taking this to court, but before we file, I want to give them one last chance to come clean." "How?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "By giving them enough rope to hang themselves." That evening, he scheduled a conference call with Reliant's senior legal team. They joined the call calm, professional, like they had nothing to hide. Michael started politely. "Gentlemen, my client, Mr. Collins, is prepared to proceed with legal action. However, before filing, we'd like clarification on the following discrepancies, namely the fabricated photos, the false technician report, and the falsified origin statement." Silence. Then one of them spoke, a man named Robert Klein, the company's legal counsel. "I think you're misunderstanding, Mr. Grant. There's been no fabrication." Michael grinned. "Then you won't mind if we subpoena the metadata from your investigative files. I'm sure the court would love to see the creation dates." Another pause. Then the sound of someone clearing their throat. Klein's tone changed, lower, guarded. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Perhaps there's been a clerical error. We can review the file. Michael pounced. Perfect. Review it quickly, because once we file, the media will too. Click. Call ended. After the call, Michael looked at me. They're rattled. They know they're caught. I felt a surge of both relief and rage. Then let's finish it. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over yet. Because powerful companies don't admit guilt, they fight, manipulate, and silence. And I had a feeling they weren't done with me. 2 days later, a black SUV pulled up outside our apartment. A man in a gray suit got out, carrying a folder. He introduced himself as Mr. Price, an independent mediator for Reliant. He smiled too wide. Mr. Collins, we'd like to resolve this quietly. No court, no press, just a fair settlement. Settlement? I said cautiously. You mean hush money? He chuckled. I wouldn't put it that way. We'll cover a portion of your damages, say 40%, and in return you sign a confidentiality agreement. I stared at him. You think you can buy my silence? He didn't blink. I think you've already been through enough, Mr. Collins. Sometimes peace is worth more than principle. I took the folder, looked him straight in the eyes, and said, Peace isn't what you took from me. You took everything. And I slammed the door. If a company tried to pay you off to stay quiet after lying to you, would you take the money or fight for the truth? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Because what happens next will prove how far they'll go to cover their lies. That message changed everything. I stared at my phone, my hands trembling. The photo showed the charred remains of our house, or at least what I thought was our house. But something didn't add up. The beams in the picture were arranged differently. The scorch patterns weren't the same, and at the bottom, scrawled in red letters, you don't know the full story. My chest tightened. Who would send this, and why now? The next morning I met with Michael. He took one look at my phone and said, Daniel, this just got serious. Whoever sent this is either watching you or trying to intimidate you. I don't understand, I said. Why now? Michael leaned forward. Because they're scared. Your discovery of the falsified report and fake technician is a threat. They know you're close to exposing them, and this message is a warning. I felt my stomach twist. I had thought the worst was behind me, the fire, the denial, the lies, but now it felt like someone was actively trying to keep me silent. We decided to escalate legally. Michael filed a formal complaint for fraud and evidence tampering, attaching all the documentation, fire marshal report, the falsified insurance photos, the fake technician signature. We also subpoenaed Reliant Home Insurance's internal investigation records. The first court date was set within a month. I spent those weeks preparing, reading through insurance law, consulting experts, and going over every shred of evidence multiple times. Sarah sat with me late at night, reviewing receipts, inspection reports, even photos I had taken before the fire. Daniel, you've been through hell, she said quietly. But this could be our chance to get justice. I nodded. I can't let them get away with this, not after what they did to us. The day of the hearing arrived. I walked into the courthouse, holding my folders tightly. The walls were tall, cold, and unfeeling, much like I imagined the insurance company would be. Michael and I were led to a conference room where the insurance company's lawyers were already seated. I recognized Robert Klein immediately, the same one from the mediator call. His calm, confident demeanor was exactly what I remembered. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. Michael started the case, presenting evidence carefully. The fire marshal's official report showing the gas leak originated underground. The insurance company's falsified photographs and documents. Expert testimony from the forensic consultant we hired, confirming that the technician's signature and inspection records were invalid. Each piece of evidence hit the insurance lawyers like a hammer. I watched Klein's face tighten with each slide. Finally, it was my turn to speak. I stood, voice shaking at first, but then stronger with each word. I'm Daniel Collins, I said. 3 weeks ago, my family lost everything. Our home burned down. We trusted Reliant Home Insurance to protect us. But instead, they lied, fabricated evidence, and blamed me for something I didn't do. They took my life, my memories, and tried to take my truth. I'm here to prove that I did nothing wrong and that they are the ones responsible for their actions. The courtroom was silent. Even Sarah, sitting in the back, held her breath. Over the next hours, the back-and-forth was tense. The insurance lawyers tried to discredit me, questioning my recollection, implying I might have made mistakes in home maintenance. But Michael countered every claim with documents, reports, and expert testimony. Then came the moment that shocked me the most. One of the insurance adjusters under oath admitted that the photos they used in the denial letter were from another property entirely, a house that had burned months earlier in a different town. They also admitted that the technician report was fabricated. I felt my heart race. All those sleepless nights, all that anxiety had led to this moment. Truth was finally coming out. The judge paused, reviewing the evidence carefully. Reliant Home Insurance, she said slowly, Your actions constitute both fraud and bad faith. Using falsified evidence to deny a legitimate claim is unacceptable." The room was tense. I held my breath. Then she said the words I'd been waiting to hear. "The court rules in favor of the plaintiff, Daniel Collins. Reliant Home Insurance is ordered to fully compensate the plaintiff for the damages to his home, plus additional penalties for fraudulent behavior." I couldn't believe it. Relief, joy, and rage all collided at once. Sarah hugged me tightly, tears streaming down her face. "We did it. We really did it." But even as I celebrated, I knew this wasn't just about money. It was about holding them accountable, about making sure no other family would be crushed by lies and false reports. After the ruling, we went public with the case. Media outlets picked up the story, exposing the insurance company's misconduct and warning others to stay vigilant. The message I had received weeks earlier, it didn't intimidate me, it motivated me. If your insurance company denied your claim with lies, what would you do? Would you fight back like Daniel or quietly accept it? Comment below, and subscribe because the next part will reveal a shocking twist. The person who orchestrated the false report may not be who you think. The anonymous call came late at night. I was sitting in my living room, staring at the court documents that confirmed our victory. I thought it was over. I thought the insurance company's lies had been exposed, their fraud punished, but the voice on the other end shattered that illusion. "You've won the court case," it whispered low and deliberate, "but you've only scratched the surface." I froze. "Who is this?" I demanded. No answer, just a click. The line went dead. The next day, I told Michael. He frowned, rubbing his temples. "Daniel, this could mean they're not done. Someone from inside might have orchestrated the fraud for their own gain." "We need to find out who." I nodded, determination hardening in my chest. "Then we find them. Whoever is behind this, they can't hide anymore." I started digging into Reliant Home Insurance's internal structure. Employee records, contractor lists, emails leaked from other cases, everything I could find. One name kept appearing, G. Miller. The same adjuster who had first inspected my house, who had been polite, calm, and perfectly rehearsed during all the calls. But the deeper I went, the more I realized it wasn't just Miller. He was a small part of a much larger scheme. I found a hidden pattern, almost like a trail: homes burned by gas leaks, denied on claims, use of fake technicians and reports, internal memos hinting at profit protection strategies and reducing payouts. And then, buried in one of the memos, a shocking line: "Ensure high-risk properties are flagged for review. Use certified contractors for reports. Maintain plausible deniability for executives." Executives. This wasn't just an overzealous adjuster. This was a company-wide scheme orchestrated from the top. I went back to the court files, combing through everything the company had submitted. Then I noticed something strange: a series of emails between Klein, Miller, and a high-ranking executive named Victor Lane, Chief Risk Officer of Reliant. Lane's emails detailed exactly how claims would be managed to minimize payouts. One line in particular froze me. "Collins' claim is high profile. Assign Miller to falsify report. Ensure he uses external references. Outcome must be denial. We cannot afford a payout. Full discretion is required." That's when it hit me. Victor Lane, the executive, had personally orchestrated my claim denial. He had designed the fraud, chosen the fake technician, and ensured my fire was blamed on me. I called Michael immediately. "Michael, it wasn't Miller acting alone. Victor Lane, he orchestrated this from the top." Michael's face darkened. "That changes everything. Now we're not just fighting the company, we're exposing a criminal operation at the executive level." I nodded grimly. "And I'm not stopping until it's exposed." The next step was risky. I needed proof Lane was directly involved. I hired a cybersecurity consultant to trace the internal emails and metadata. Within 48 hours, we had confirmation Lane had signed off on the report, instructed Miller on how to manipulate it, and approved the false documentation. I felt a mixture of relief and fury. Relief because we finally had undeniable proof. Fury because this man had tried to ruin my family's life, all to protect his company's profits. That evening, Sarah looked at me, worry in her eyes. "Daniel, this is bigger than us now. What if they retaliate?" I took her hands. "We've already survived fire, fraud, and lies. If this man thinks fear will stop me, he's wrong. This is about justice, not revenge." Her eyes welled up. "I just want our home back and peace for Lily." I hugged her tightly. "We'll get it, and we'll make sure no one else goes through what we did." The story went public. I provided the emails, the falsified reports, and the proof of Lane's involvement to investigative journalists. News outlets picked it up: insurance fraud, executive corruption, victimized homeowners. Victor Lane's name was everywhere. Miller, the adjuster, was suspended pending investigation, and the company faced massive scrutiny from regulators. But even as the world learned the truth, I realized something chilling. Lane had tried to control the narrative, to hide behind layers of lies. And if he could do that to me, How many others had fallen silently, unable to fight back? It made me furious. But it also gave me purpose. I stood on the empty lot where our home once stood. The charred remains were gone, cleared by the city weeks ago. In their place, the foundation of something new began to take shape, not just a house, but a symbol of resilience. I looked at Sarah and Lily. "We're rebuilding," I said. "Not just the house, but our lives, and we'll make sure people know the truth." Sarah smiled, tears running down her face. "We survived the fire, Daniel, and now we'll survive this too." Lily ran up, holding a crayon drawing of the house, our house. "Daddy, it's perfect now." I picked her up, holding her close. "It will be, baby, it will be." If someone tried to destroy your life for profit, would you expose them no matter the risk? Tell me in the comments below. And subscribe, the final part will reveal the aftermath, justice, closure, and the surprising twists no one expected. Even after Victor Lane's exposure, the phone message haunted me. "You think you won." But the game isn't over yet. The words scrawled across my screen felt like a warning. I couldn't ignore it, but I also couldn't let fear control me. I had survived fire, fraud, lies, and intimidation. I wasn't about to back down now. Michael advised caution. "Daniel, whoever sent that is probably trying to intimidate you into silence. Don't respond. Let the authorities handle it." I nodded, swallowing my fear, but deep down I knew I couldn't just wait. I had to see this through, not just for my family, but for every other person Lane had tried to manipulate. Weeks passed. The media coverage of Lane and Reliant Home Insurance intensified. Investigators launched a full-scale audit of the company. Executives were subpoenaed. Miller and other adjusters were suspended pending criminal investigations. Then came the bombshell. Victor Lane was arrested on multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. The very man who had orchestrated my family's nightmare would finally face consequences. I remember watching the live news feed with Sarah and Lily. The camera caught Lane being led out in handcuffs. His face was pale, controlled, betraying a hint of panic. Sarah whispered, "He got what he deserved." I nodded, a mixture of relief and lingering anger. Finally, justice. But the legal battle wasn't just about Lane. Reliant Home Insurance was facing massive fines, lawsuits, and regulatory sanctions. Their reputation was in ruins. For the first time since the fire, I felt a flicker of hope. Michael looked at me one evening, smiling wryly. "You didn't just win a court case, Daniel. You exposed a system. People will think twice before pulling the same stunt again." I smiled, but my eyes were tired. "It's not about me anymore. It's about everyone else who can't fight back." The rebuild of our house began. Slowly, brick by brick, beam by beam, the skeleton of our old life transformed into something new. I stood on the foundation with Sarah and Lily one morning, sunlight glinting on the steel beams. "I can't believe we're here," she said softly. Lily ran around, laughter filling the empty spaces where the fire had once roared. "Daddy, look, it's bigger than before." I laughed, hugging her. "Yes, baby, and safer too." The irony wasn't lost on me. After the fire, after the fraud, after the lies, the destruction had led to a fresh start. I also made it my mission to help others. I started an advocacy group for homeowners fighting insurance fraud. I shared my story publicly, spoke to legislators, and worked with journalists to hold insurance companies accountable. People began reaching out, hundreds of stories, many similar to mine. Families losing homes, being blamed for accidents they didn't cause, struggling to get their claims honored. And through it all, I realized one thing. The system might favor corporations and money, but truth and persistence could still win. Months later, I received a final message, this time from a journalist who had covered the story extensively. "Lane pled guilty. Reliant agreed to a multi-million-dollar settlement for affected homeowners. Your story has changed the industry. You've done more than fight, you've protected hundreds." I read it aloud to Sarah and Lily. Tears streamed down our faces. Not just relief, but pride. "We did it," I whispered. "We really did it." Even now, sometimes I think back to that night when the fire consumed our home. The terror, the helplessness, the sense that everything was lost. And then I realized losing our home didn't break us. It forced us to fight. It forced me to uncover lies, expose corruption, and demand justice not just for myself, but for countless others. And that is the true victory. If your life was upended by disaster, and the people you trusted tried to blame you, would you fight back like Daniel? Comment below, your story matters. And subscribe, because stories like this remind us that courage and persistence can expose the truth, no matter how impossible it seems. Closing line for dramatic impact. The fire took our home, the insurance tried to take our truth, but in the end, justice burned brighter than the flames ever could.